I'm Shane Hewitt. Welcome to the Shiftheads Podcast with a very special guest on the episode today. It's Seamus the dog and Greg Fish. Hey, Fishy.
How's it going?
Good. Okay, now we've talked about Seamus many times on the radio program, and Seamus is what exactly is other than great conditioner.
It's a trash special from South LA. So we do say that he's straight out of Compton because we are pretty sure that he is in fact straight out of Compton.
Yeah.
And he's there's a term, the Heinz 57 dog. He's more like Heinz 99 dog.
Wow. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, we sent his genes to be tested and they basically said, I don't know what you have, but it's a lot.
It came back. It's a dog.
It's a dog. Yeah, we're pretty sure it's a dog. We're not 100% sure, but like 95%. But if we are serious, one of the things in his gene report said he has a 0% chance of being hairless, and I think that they've nailed that.
Yeah,
like
no kidding, hey?
They got that prediction completely correct.
Fuzzy wuzzy. All right.
Yeah.
I love it.
He unfortunately, he would do this segment, but unfortunately he is very camera shy, so I'm going to go ahead and put him down.
Yeah, he won't. Oh, look at him. He's very cute. My God. There you go. Really Seamus the dog with Greg Fish. Okay, if you want to get in on the world of weird things, WOWT.news is where you go for the Substack. All the information and stuff you can link for the world of weird things with Greg Fish on the website as well. So the Substack is different. If you don't know the Substack, it's basically a newsletter and a blog where you get automatically told what is coming up, what is happening, and everything that's going on. And you get these articles that we have here. And why don't you get us started here? Because we did have an ask about black holes. So that's where we're going here. So I want you to get started with the very first question. Fish, what is a black hole? And I'll show everybody the pictures that you have here on the website while you get started here. So on your mark, get set, go.
So a black hole is really difficult to explain because it's a very simple object, but there's a lot of really complicated stuff going on in it. So a black hole is basically the result of a supernova where the star was so massive that its gravity overwhelmed what was left of its core. When a sun exists, when a star lives, it has two forces that keep fighting for balance. The first force is gravity. It's what's keeping it together. It's what's creating the fusion. It's trying to get that plasma as compact as possible. It raises a lot of heat. It raises a lot of pressure. And so it generates that shock wave that we see, all of those sunspots, all of those protuberances. It's all the energy that makes a star go. Now, the other force is the electromagnetic resistance inside of it. It's trying to also fly away because the plasma is electrically charged. It's trying to get out. It's trying to essentially blow itself apart. So you're essentially dealing with, when someone says a star is essentially a controlled explosion that lasts for millions or billions or trillions of years, that's essentially what it is. It's a big giant thermonuclear explosion.
Okay.
Most stars, the vast majority of the stars, are just kind of going to peter out. Eventually, the core is going to get so cool that these outer layers will eventually shut off. They'll become planetary nebulas, or they might not have nebulas at all, but they'll eventually cool into a white dwarf. And then at some point, a black dwarf is just going to be just a big lump of essentially coal that's just hanging out there in space. But if you have a massive enough star, something on the range of 8, 9, 10 times the mass of our sun, something very different happens. First, you get this, first the core keeps fusing atoms that are heavier and heavier and heavier until it gets to iron. Now, iron is a very interesting chemical because iron, when you start fusing iron, there is no net gain in energy. So now the star can't keep itself together and gravity wins. So the star implodes massively. And depending on the strength of that implosion, you either get a neutron star where matter is so compact that it essentially breaks. You just have the essential particles of what makes matter pressing against each other to the point where they cannot press against each other anymore without essentially imploding. And that's known as degenerate pressure.
Okay, Let me have a question before you continue
Yeah.
here. So we're going from a place where we have a whole lot of nothing, and then we have a whole lot of something, and then we end up with a whole lot of nothing. And I just wanted to add in, like, don't worry, it's not like we're talking about Thursday here that this is going to happen. This is process over the millions and millions of years. Yeah.
So for our star, we don't have to worry about that. Our star
Okay.
is nowhere near massive enough for this to ever happen. It will swell up in about 4 billion years. And that's something that I don't think we'll have to deal with, because the odds of us being on the planet billions of years from now, considering the environment in just a billion years, are basically nil. Like in a billion
That's a
years.
crazy notion, really, when you think about
Yeah.
it, right? Like we as a species will probably be long gone, maybe consciousness and all, by the time this stuff gets settled out.
I mean, yeah, in an ideal world, we might exist as something else, somewhere else in the universe. But at that point, like, it's so far away from us. Like, this is like the distance between that time and now is more the distance between the first animals, not even complex animals, just the first simplest animals that ever evolved on Earth, and us. And it's double that distance. So what
Wow.
happens from that point on? We can start thinking about, oh, this might happen and that might happen, but the odds that we're going to be anywhere near right are ridiculously low. So I'm not even going to bother,
Fair ball.
honestly.
Good ball. Yeah, well done.
So yeah. So when we start talking about these extremely complicated densities and these extremely complicated objects that arise from the stars imploding, the actual supernova explosion takes very little time. So the actual supernova part of the explosion can take tens of thousands of years, because the actual event may be minutes or a couple hours, and the light from it can shine for about a month or so. And then the actual shockwave, as it spreads, we're talking 30, 40, 50, 60,000 years, depending on the size of the star. Now, as that shockwave spreads, there's all sorts of unpleasant things that happen to planets that get caught up, anywhere between 300 light years or closer. But after that, this is a pretty light show, and there's not much need to worry.
Have we actually seen it? Like, have we seen it happen?
Yes, we have actually seen it happen in the 1600s. There was an explosion. I believe it's Cassiopeia was the supernova, and people were reporting to be able to read books just by the light of the supernova in the sky. So that it has been recorded in our history. There's been other events that we think were supernovas that have been recorded by earlier civilizations, and there are things that come up as omens or divine presence or divine lights in the sky. But around the 1600s, that's when we're like, oh yeah, this is dying stars.
Wow.
Like we have some idea what this is now.
That's crazy. Okay, so black holes, stars go supernova, and then that's kind of, I guess, we're learning how they get formed. But then now, what are they? Because now it's just a big old nothing thing.
Well, it's not. This is the thing. This is the interesting thing. So when we're talking about neutron stars, we're talking about the vast majority of atoms is empty space. I'm sure that everyone has learned this at this point now. And the conditions inside of a neutron star are so dense that now there's no empty space. Everything is really crammed up together. And then a black hole is the next step. So a supernova that falls in a black hole is actually called a hypernova. And what it is, it goes to that limit where all of these particles are bunched up together and goes beyond that. All of those particles are now turned into raw energy. They can exist in the same space and in the same time. They compact themselves even further, and a black hole is born. And a black hole is not nothing, but it's not matter. It's pure energy wrapped in gravity that is so extreme that light cannot escape it, simply because the escape velocity of the surface of this new object has to exceed the speed of light.
Okay, so that's where the notion of the giant vacuum comes in.
Yes, and this is one of those misconceptions. So there's a couple of major misconceptions about black holes. The first is that it's nothing, that it's a tear in space and time, and it's not. It's a warping of space and time. It's a very extreme warping due to tidal forces, but there is actually an object there The other interesting thing about that is that there's nothing that says that you actually have to be a certain mass to become a black hole. You can compact anything into something known as the Schwarzschild radius. If you compact anything tightly enough using some sort of energy, lasers, nuclear explosions, whatever you have to, you go past the radius at that particular scale, and you get a black hole. It just is going to behave differently based on the scale. So that's another important part. So it's this warping where matter becomes raw streams of energy controlled by its own gravity and tidal forces. So it is something. It's not just nothing. And then it is not a vacuum either. So if you were to take the sun out of the solar system and replace it with a black hole that was one stellar mass, absolutely nothing would change for us in terms of stellar dynamics. Now, of course, going to be a problem because the sky is going to go dark. It's going to get real cold really fast because we don't have the sunlight coming in. So about 8 minutes after you do that, all of a sudden it's going to be night, and it's going to start getting real chilly, like, couple hundred degrees below zero chilly.
Okay. Yeah. So, okay.
But
that's a lot of impact, really, when you think about it.
Yeah, but it's not going to suck us in. Like, we're not going to start careening towards that new black hole because it's so far away. You have to be within the tidal forces of the black hole in order to be actually drawn in. And if you come close enough, you can still get away. It's just the closer you get, the more exponentially difficult it is to get away. And then there's a certain point, it depends just on the mass of the black hole, where you passed so close that now you can't get out. That's what you're now stuck. And when you're stuck, you get accelerated very quickly because now you have to follow the tidal force of the black hole. And space essentially drags you around the event horizon. It's that the actual surface of the black hole. So a black hole doesn't really have a surface per se, but it's that when you no longer can see what's inside, that dawn of that absolute darkness, that's the event horizon. So you're going to get whipped around that event horizon so quickly, there's going to start pulling out the matter inside of you into atoms. Those atoms are going to start moving so quickly, and they're going to start colliding with each other so fiercely and so ferociously, they're going to heat up to the point where they're essentially white hot. So that first picture that you showed, that's the accretion disk. So actually, if we can see that again, there's a couple of really interesting things that happen around that black hole.
Yeah, do that. You keep talking, I'll bring it up.
So that accretion disk is going to be white hot, and that's actually how we detect black holes, because it's so noisy from a radio standpoint, from an optical standpoint. It looks almost like a star, but it's a little bit weirdly faint, and it's moving way too quickly, and it's way too small to be a star. Now, this is from the movie Interstellar, so this is supposed to be a supermassive black hole. So this would be something that's like the size of a solar system. So that's kind of blown up. And then you see also this ring around the black hole. And the ring around the black hole is actually the distortion of that accretion disk from the front and from the back of the black hole, because the photons that carry that energy, that carry that light, that carry the information, have to whip around so quickly that they reflect and make this warped funhouse mirror effect. Like that's how much black holes can distort space. Now, actually, fun fact, neutron stars can do that too. So it's a function of gravity. It's when you're talking about general relativity, like, and the warping of space and time, this is what we're talking about. This is the illustration of it. What's going behind the black hole or the neutron star, you can see the light from it. And if it had any sort of structure, if it had any sort of information, you would be able to see that kind of distorted inside of that light as well.
Okay, so that's interesting, because I mean, that's sort of the out of the box thinking, that every way that you think about this, you can't, because it's not going to happen, because it's distorted. It's not going to happen in a ball. It's not going to happen in a ring. It's not going to happen in whatever. Even though you describe it going in a ring, chances are it could be going all kinds of different ways with distortion and everything else. So that's quite fascinating. I guess the next place that goes with that is, when those atoms get sucked out of you and then you're getting kicked into it, fish, like, Is there any speculation, or do you have any ideas where you go on the other side? Like, do you just kind of get to the other side of it and you're like, hey, it turns out it's just like Walmart?
So nobody knows. That's a horrific thought, by the way. Let's not entertain it. But the problem is no one really knows where you go, because the singularity, another one of the things everyone knows, oh, it's the inside of a black hole, there's a singularity, and the singularity is the point where ... But the singularity isn't really a place. It's a time. It's the future. You're basically being pulled towards the future. That's why you can't escape. And then what ultimately happens there, we don't know, but we know that you're just going to be a whole bunch of atoms when you get there. And there's all sorts of very interesting theories about what ultimately happens. And maybe it's possible to see what the black hole swallowed at some point in the future. Because the interesting thing about black holes is we are pretty sure that they actually evaporate. So when a black hole sucks down these atoms, there is a disruption in the space and time, or the fabric of space and time around the black hole. And normally, when you have that kind of disruption, you get a particle and an antiparticle. You get a positron and an electron. And then one of them goes into the black hole and the other is pushed out. And this basically has to happen because of thermodynamics. It has to be balanced, otherwise the universe will kind of basically implode in on itself or explode completely. So the energy has to balance. So it radiates away these teeny tiny little positrons and electrons throughout its lifetime, which could be quadrillions, quintillion, just absolutely absurd amount of years. But eventually it's going to radiate away so much that it cannot hold its mass together anymore, and then it will explode, and whatever is inside of it will come out.
Well, you talk about the future there. So, I mean, we could be sitting here and all of a sudden, blap, goes the universe, and here comes a bunch of old particles and planet bits, like, kind of like when you turn on your vacuum and it just kind of barfs out the dust from your last vacuuming session. It's kind of how I imagine it.
Yeah, that's kind of it. And, if you want to take that analogy further, another interesting thing about black holes is that how much they can actually eat is based on their event horizon, like how big they are, how much they can actually suck down. So they actually only suck down maybe about 1 or 2% of the actual matter that they attract. And what's happening there is when you see these big eruptions of X-rays, you see these giant jets coming out of supermassive black holes. Those are belches. This is the black hole basically going, oh, that's too much. Brrr.
Wow. Okay, cool. Well, okay. So in the black holes for you on the Substack, WOWT, as in worldofweirdthings.news. So all those links will be in the description for you. One last question, which might set up the next conversation, Fishy. I don't know. Black holes, wormholes. Black holes, as I'm learning here, are this, thing that happens and they don't know where they go. A wormhole is sort of like a secret passageway through our current time frame, or at least time as we understand it, to be able to be a passageway between those. Is that the difference?
Yes. So wormhole is what we think could happen if two black holes were able to connect,
right,
and somehow maintain that bridge for an extended period of time. That's what we think happens. And when it comes to wormholes, some of them could be on like a quantum scale where tiny little particles could teleport. And we've actually created those in labs. It's the really big traversable wormholes that are a bit of a head scratcher, and there's some controversy whether they can exist or not, because there is the controversy of, can two black holes ever link up and be stable? Can they actually, what happens when two singularities meet? We don't know. We have a couple of formulas, we have a couple of ideas. We think it may have something to do with dark matter, but it all gets really, really, really fuzzy.
Okay. Well, he said it wasn't fuzzy already. Fuzzier. Okay, Greg Fish, there you go. World of Weird Things. Not only is it an article like this, there's a couple of them per week and it'll come right to your mailbox. So it's worth jumping in on too. And more about that. Okay, now I've got questions about wormholes as some future conversation. Thanks for being here, brother. Great to see you. Thanks to Seamus for stepping in.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Always a pleasure. And he is napping after his performance here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's actually I have to say, it is really interesting to do this and know that people are gonna, see all of this. And I just want to say that, to all the shift heads, I keep telling you I have a face for radio. Now you can see the proof.
Thank you so much, Greg Fish. I'm Shane Hewitt. Thank you for joining us, the Shiftheads Podcast.
Hey there, Steve Stebbing here. This week on What the Hell Should I Watch? I got my full review of Wonka. Five Nights at Freddy's is on 4K for all the, the kids that love the video games and the jump scares and the Fuzzy Fuzzbear and all that kind of stuff. I got a lot of classic films that are now on Blu-ray in a remastered form. Psych, the complete series, and possibly the end of the DC universe as we know it.